Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast from Agriland that keeps you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined by journalist Aisling O'Brien. In terms of news, the Agri-Climate Rural Environment Scheme, or ACRES, is the gift that keeps on giving. Only a couple of weeks ago, we had the announcement of an interim payment for those farmers who are participating in tranche 1 of the scheme. And now, Aisling, this week, big news for those who applied to tranche 2.
Yeah, good news to kick off this week on the podcast, Charles, because there were thousands of farmers, around 9,000 to be precise, who have been on tenterhooks in recent months, waiting to hear if they would be accepted into tranche 2 of ACRES. So as we know, all 46,000 farmers who applied for the first tranche were brought into the flagship environmental scheme under the new Common Agricultural Policy, which of course has a budget of some €1.5 billion over the lifetime of the scheme. Now, when ACRES was announced, we were told by the department that there would be 50,000 places for farmers in the scheme. So that led to a major headache when last December, some 9,000 farmers applied for the remaining 4,000 places, which were available under tranche 2. Now, Minister for Agriculture Charlie McConalogue had previously indicated that it would be limited to 4,000, with a ranking and selection process being undertaken by the department to determine who essentially would get in. Now, farming organisations and politicians had appealed to the minister to find the necessary funding to ensure that any farmer who wanted to join ACRES would get a place on the scheme. So this week, as you said, the minister has changed his position. And on Wednesday evening, we got confirmation that all farmers who have applied for tranche 2 will be accepted. So this means that there will be an additional area of around 100,000 hectares brought into the scheme, which will eventually include around 55,000 farmers. So the minister said that the level of interest shown by farmers in the scheme since its launch has been hugely encouraging, in his words. And he said that the engagement with environmental action from farmers was encouraging. And he was adamant that none of this engagement and ambition would be left behind. So how it all came about, essentially, we were told, was that the Department of Agriculture sat down with the Department of Public Expenditure and they explored all options to facilitate farmers. And it seems that the minister in that department, Paschal Donoghue, and Minister Charlie McConalogue struck an agreement to extend the purse strings essentially on this one. And the Department of Agriculture is going to shortly get in touch with all tranche 2 applicants to provide them with an update in relation to their participation in ACRES. And we have seen issues where it comes to payments with ACRES. You mentioned about the interim payment, Charles, but the fact that there was 46,000 farmers accepted in with tranche 1, we saw that led to huge complications, delays with payments. They're still trying to work through the payments for tranche 1, and we're going to see the balancing payments essentially made in June on that scheme. But we have to see if an extra 9,000 farmers are going to muddy the waters here, because it has been a complicated scheme to roll out. It does involve scoring of lands, and a lot of advisors out there as well will be looking on, scratching their heads, wondering that this is another layer to their workload. But the IFA President, Francie Gorman, has welcomed the confirmation that everybody who applied for tranche 2 will get a place on ACRES. And he said that there will be no impact on overall payment rates. And he said it was a positive move by the department because of the climate ambition that farmers have shown, their willingness to join the scheme. And he said it was important that no farmer was left out as well. So, good news for those in tranche 2 of ACRES. But hopefully payment rates not affected, but the speed of delivery, we hope, won't get impacted by this.
Yeah, and I suppose, Aisling, it might be too pessimistic at this point to start talking about an interim payment for tranche 2. But with the interim payment for tranche 1...
Very, very pessimistic.
yeah. With the interim payment for tranche 1 that you mentioned, and with as well the regular payments due in June, and now the announcement this week about all tranche 2 applicants been taken in. Do you think farmers can be confident that we've seen the back of those payment delays issues?
Well, the minister has said that they've ironed out the kinks in the system, but we still see, that the department has a backlog when it comes to ACRES payments. They're still working through BIS, CRIS, the ECO scheme. We had news that about 7,000 ECO scheme applications are still being worked through by the department as well. So nobody doubts the workload of the department as well, trying to get through all of these new schemes. And there is terms and conditions that are attached to these new schemes. And I'm sure the EU Commission would be keeping a close eye on how they're administered as well, Charles. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it does impact the rollout of payments. And look, the minister is saying that those issues have been addressed, but we'll wait with bated breath on that.
For sure, Aisling. And staying with the minister for a moment, Aisling, he was speaking at an event today in the windswept Midlands, just outside Mullingar in County Westmeath, where he was announcing what has been described as the largest European innovation partnership ever in Ireland. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's called Farming for Water, and it's one of the EIP projects, the European Innovation Partnership projects, as you said, around the country. There are over 20 of those kind of projects currently in Ireland in 12 different counties. Working with nearly 3,000 farmers before this project came along. And they're focused on looking at areas such as biodiversity loss, declining water quality, and they kind of use a partnership model and bring farmers along on the journey with, locally led teams. And it has been very successful in different areas around the country. But this is a significant ramping up because this is a 60 million euro project, and it's going to support up to 15,000 farmers around the country to put in place measures to improve water quality. And depending on the uptake here, Charles, farmers could expect maybe potentially up to 10,000 euro in payments under this scheme. But it will, I suppose, depend on how many apply and how it looks in the coming weeks ahead. So LawPro, who are the local authority water programme in partnership with Teagasc and Dairy Industry Ireland, were successful in a competitive call for this EIP under the Rural Development Programme and Ireland's CAP strategic plan. And the Department of Agriculture has allocated a budget of 50 million euro over 5 years, which will cover the support to be paid to the farmers. And outside of that funding, then the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage are going to put up the remaining 10 million euro, which will cover the administrative and operational costs of the EIP. And an operational group has been established, we were told at the launch today, by the LawPro partnership. And Board Bia are involved here as well, along with Dairy Industry Ireland and Teagasc. And there is other stakeholders involved as well. It is a major, major project. And I suppose given the backdrop, the pressures on water quality to hold on to our nitrates derogation from the EU Commission, this is an important project, Charles, when it comes to that. And Minister Charlie McConalogue said that the future of our farms and the families on those farms are largely dependent on successful water quality outcomes. And he was absolutely confident that farmers would not be found wanting in delivering those outcomes as well. And the Minister of State at the department, Pippa Hackett, called the EIP a flagship project. And she said it was the largest EIP in the country to date, both in terms of funding and its ambition in relation to the role that agriculture can play in improving water quality. So it will be an exciting project. And DII, who are a collaborator on the project, said it would be accessible to all farm types. And the chair of DII, Pat Sheehan, said that the programme would be supplemented by additional industry funding and support, and it underscores the commitment to Ireland's water quality objectives. And he said that they would collaborate closely with our dairy farm family suppliers and other stakeholders who have a strong track record in this area. So look, it is a step forward on improving water quality, and I no doubt a lot of farmers out there will be interested in getting involved in that.
Yeah, definitely, Aisling. And it was interesting when you look at the attendance at today's launch for that EIP. You had, as you said, Minister McConalogue, Minister Hackett, and Minister of State Malcolm Noonan at the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. But there was also representatives from the world of politics and the world of industry. Conor Movell, the Director of Dairy Industry Ireland, was there as well. And actually, Sean McNamara, the president of the Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association, who's a local farmer in the area, he was there as well to make sure, Minister McConalogue, that it wasn't a walk in the park for the minister, let's say. But Aisling, this wasn't the only EIP that was announced this week that farmers might be interested in.
Yeah, so another EIP was unveiled by the department this week as well, and it all focuses on the conservation of breeding waders and their birds like the curlew and the lapwing, which are under severe pressure around the country. So this is going to be a nationwide EIP, and it's been allocated 25 million euro, and that is to cover both the administration and the payments to participating farmers. Now, it's all aiming to secure the existing wader populations at key sites, and it will also support population recovery through wider landscape management and policy development, we're being told. Now, 7.5 million euro of that 25 million euro has been ring fenced for payments to farmers for actions that they undertake on the ground. And we were told that populations of breeding waders like the curlew, the snipe, the redshank, the dunlin, the lapwing and the golden plover have declined by as much as 98% in recent decades across the Irish countryside. So this EIP is going to be very crucial in making sure that those populations are conserved and recover, hopefully, as well. So this all followed an open call for proposals last December, and it was a consortium led by Irish Rural Link that was successful, and they are going to be the operational group delivering this EIP, and it also includes bodies such as the Hen Harrier Project, the Atlantic Technological University, University College Dublin, the Zoological Society of Ireland and the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, among others. So Minister Charlie McConalogue said that the Breeding Waders EIP would build on the success of previous conservation programmes such as the Hen Harrier Project as well. And he said through engaging with farmers to support the implementation of practical conservation actions, he believed that the project would play a significant role in starting to reverse the decline in those population trends as well. So Minister Malcolm Noonan as well involved in this one, as well as Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture, Pippa Hackett as well. And they were all stressing that the concept of this EIP is to work with farmers and other stakeholders, a ground-up approach here to help these birds which are in trouble at the moment.
And just staying on the broader issue of water quality, Aisling, there's an important case in the High Court at the moment that could potentially have enormous implications for Ireland's nitrates action plan and nitrates derogation. And while the case is yet to be decided, there was movement on it this week, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was, Charles. This is a complex case taken by An Taisce, which, as you said, could potentially impact thousands of farmers around the country. So essentially what it boils down to is An Taisce is challenging the validity of Ireland's fifth NAP, which is the Nitrates Action Programme, in the High Court. And it's brought judicial review proceedings against the Department of Housing, Heritage and Local Government, the Environmental Assessment Unit, the State and the Attorney General. Now, the Department of Agriculture, the IFA and the ICMSA are notice parties involved in this proceedings as well. And the case did move forward this week. As you said, we got an interim judgment, which was nearly 93,000 words long, from the presiding judge, that is Mr. Justice Richard Humphreys. And it was setting out what issues will come before the court in relation to the case. And the judge outlined that the case involved what he said was an embarrassment of issues. There was a total of 78 different questions identified on the issue paper, he said, which is a record-breaking number in this list. And in essence, the judge has set out that the case must proceed on the basis that the Nitrates Action Programme is in accordance with the Nitrates Directive, save to the extent that provisions of the Nitrates Directive overlap with other pleaded points, is how he put it. And that language, Charles, has been warmly welcomed by farm organisations because they say it provides clarity to farmers out there at the moment who are availing of the nitrates derogation. But as you rightly said, we should stress that there's a long way to go in this case yet, potentially. IFA President Francie Gorman said that the Nitrates Action Programme and the derogation will stand while these matters are being considered, and it would be a huge relief to the farmers around the country who do avail of the derogation. And he said that evidence provided by farm organisations and farmers had demonstrated the impact removing the derogation would have on farms around the country. And he noted as well that An Taisce benefits from cost protection orders to take cases such as these to the courts, but farmers don't have such protection. And he said that we have to put our own funds on the line to protect our livelihoods. And he was going to ask An Taisce, he said, to sit down with the IFA to have what he called a rational discussion about these issues. And he said the courtroom is not a place to set policy. Now, the ICMSA, who are also notice parties in these proceedings, issued a statement as well on the back of this, saying that it would provide a degree of certainty to farmers out there. The ICMSA president, Dennis Drennan, said whatever judgment would ultimately be handed down, and for the sake of rural Ireland, it had better allow the continuation of the nitrates derogation. And he said that this case has to end the comic opera that had the farm organisations as the only parties in this High Court case who were paying their own way and not passing the bill back to the taxpayers. And he said the state must look at the way it enables and funds directly or indirectly challenges against its own duly decided policy. So interesting words there from the farm leaders in terms of how An Taisce funds or doesn't fund these kind of challenges. But as you rightly said, this is an important case. We're going to keep a very close eye on it. But an interim judgment this week being welcomed by farm organisations because it provides clarity, but a long way to go yet on this, Charles.
Yeah, and fair play, Aisling, for summing that up so succinctly, because it does sound very complicated indeed. But just while we're on the NEP, on the NAP, we learned this week as well that Teagasc had issued its advisors with an update on the Nutrient Management Plan online system in order to give effect to a number of proposals that Minister McConalogue had recently outlined as part of the interim review of the NAP. So that's something as well to keep an eye out for those farmers involved and interested in the nitrates derogation and nitrates issues. And finally, Aisling, just before we finish up this week, a dairy farmer in Kerry has seen not quite a miraculous birth, but these triplet calves have nonetheless caught the attention of a priest.
That's true, Charles. So dairy farmer Pat Talbot spoke to Agriland this week. He's farming in Ahadoe, which is located close to Killarney. So he had a Frisian cow who's in her 7th lactation, and she was scanned in calf to twins. She had been served through AI from a Munster bovine Belgian blue bull, and about 10 days ago, nearly 2 weeks ago now, Pat was surprised when the cow calved herself triplets and all bulls. And he said that, it was a real surprise. It took a bit out of her, to be fair, given her age and everything and the fact that it wasn't expected. But the calves are doing well, thankfully. And he said, twins aren't unusual on his farm, but this is actually the first time he's ever had triplets on the farm in Kerry. But as you did allude to there's been a bit of a divine intervention in this story, because I asked Pat what his plans for the triplet bulls were, given that he is on a dairy farm. And here's what he had to say.
I'm under pressure. My uncle, the priest in Killarney town, Father Paddy O'Donoghue, and he's telling me to keep them.
Why is that? Does he think they're good luck or what?
I'd say good luck, yeah. And if I go to the map with him, I'd be struck down coming home. I wouldn't know.
So as you can hear there, Charles, Fernando, Luca and Bo, who were named by Pat's neighbour's daughter, Aideen Blenner-Hassett, they've got a reprieve at the moment, thanks to Father Paddy O'Donoghue, Pat's uncle, appealing to him to hold on to these calves who he sees as good luck. So, it's a lovely story and a lot of interest in it this week. But not to be outdone in Kerry, we've seen other sets of triplets in the past week around the country, because not one but two IFA county chairmen in North Leinster have lately become accustomed to triplet heifer calves born on their farm. The newly elected IFA Louth County Chair Kevin Sweeney was recently surprised as well to find triplet heifer calves on his farm in RD. He said that he couldn't believe it, and the calves are flying it at the moment. He said they've never seen it before on their farm, and he doubts that they might ever see it again as well. And Longford IFA Chair John Sheridan saw triplet Frisian heifers born in the middle of February on his farm in Edwardstown. And he told us that the calves are well reared already and absolutely flying. We've pictures of all of the calves in question on Agriland, so you can check it out over there. But yeah, the kingdom not to be outdone by Longford and Louth this week. And glad to hear that all of the calves are doing well. And look, a lot of farmers out there have put down a long, hard calving season. A lot of them are in the middle of it at the moment, but the likes of Pat Talbot is coming into the back nine, so to speak. He doesn't have too many left to calve. So hopefully calving is going well for everybody around the country, and the sleepless nights will be coming to an end soon.
Absolutely, Aisling, and lovely stories. But as you say, as long as everybody gets through calving season safely, that's the main thing. But that unfortunately brings us to the end of this week's show. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love it if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars or share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Aisling and myself, all the best for the weekend.